Welcome, everyone. So, I'm Mariquita Solis, and I am the Uncaged Heart Coach. So, I'm excited for you to come to join us on our live stream today, Uncaged Leaders. And one of my good friends is here today. He will be speaking, Elliot Brozovsky. He is a gifted author and academic who has balanced a rigorous career in professional writing and many other things with his profound spiritual journey into the interior landscape. So, from teaching leadership in his church, in our church really, to exploring the depth of the metaphysics, Elliot refuses to leave any corner of his spirit untouched. He's here today to talk about living with intentionality and the stellar determination it takes to make a real impact on our world. And Elliot, you're only 22, so thank you for joining me. I'm excited to hear your zest for life and for growth, for improvement. That's not much, I mean, it's not common that you find that in a person of your age.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
Well, all right. And I know that you're used to being on the stage as a in the classroom and also on the stage at Unity North, where you were a guest speaker there. So, and I was in one of your classes at Unity, the metaphysical class,
That's right.
metaphysics.
Yeah, that's right. It was such a joy to teach, and I had such an amazing audience to work with. It was really just invigorating and full of life for me.
Yeah, and you were so on point in the session. The session began at the right on the time, and it ended right on time, and everything was. I don't know how you did that, but it was moving, nothing boring, and going. You knew exactly what was going on. You had your slides up and just wow. I mean, that was not like most of the sessions normally in classes that I take. So yeah, I mean, but anyway.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's me just trying to prioritize putting my experience in the classroom in action and seeing if I can make it just as enjoyable and, fun for the students as possible, but really focusing on learning and conversation. And the more I can get it kind of structured, the more opportunity we have for just really diving in depth into conversation. So that was my priority. And it's so satisfying for me to hear from you and some of the other people who were in that class and in those conversations to hear like how fun that was.
Yeah. And here I am learning from a 22-year-old. Isn't that crazy? I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Anyway, no, it's amazing. So, yeah. Anyway, let us know if you're watching. I see that we have a few people watching, or if you're watching on the replay, and if you have any questions for Elliot. So, now, Elliot, so tell us about your academic career.
My academic career was a huge priority for the early parts of my life. I mean, since right before I started high school, I knew what I wanted to go into. I knew, where my path was in college. And my parents offered me the opportunity to dual enroll. So at 14, I started taking college classes. And they were also accelerated timeline wise. I was able to fit a lot in before I graduated high school. I graduated high school at 16. And then I went straight on to my bachelor's degree in English, which I got at 18. And then I thought the master's degree was the right fit for me. A lot of people told me I don't necessarily need a specific degree to go into writing, which was my interest at the time and still is. And, that the English bachelor's degree would be enough. But I luckily had a professor who taught at the master's level and was also the head of the teaching assistants. She was able to kind of paint a picture of what that opportunity looks like for me to go ahead and get that master's degree, even though it was professional writing and I was interested in doing, fictional novel author career. It had that as a concentration. So I went, all right, let me see if I can learn more about my craft. Let me see what opportunities I can get for myself that way. So I did get that master's degree by 21. And as I was going through and getting that master's degree, that's when I started teaching at the college level. I taught classes at KSU the whole time I was getting that master's degree. So not only did I study and train in creative writing specifically, but I also studied in composition and rhetoric, which is what gave me the tools to be in the classroom, to teach composition, writing, and then I've applied those skills to to teaching at Unity and teaching at my church.
That's amazing. And how old are you now? Did I ask you that?
22 now. So I've
22.
had my master's degree for a little bit now, and I'm still applying those skills. And now I'm really focused more on the writing on a fictional level. So before I was focused on what does the classroom look like for me. And then once I had the freedom of no longer taking and teaching classes, I've been really, looking at how to devote myself to writing my novel manuscript.
Right. I know. I keep asking, how old are you? Because I keep thinking it can't be possible that he's 22. But let's just accept it. I'm not going to ask you anymore. All right.
I appreciate it.
So, all right. So, how about the rest of your family? Are they did they move as quickly through academia as you did?
It's kind of a mixed bag in my family because we have different skills, different interests. Both of my parents went to college and never ended up graduating from college. So they have a little experience under their belt and they were able to support me as I strived in my college careers. But because neither of them followed through with fully getting that degree, which they didn't need to for their chosen careers, and they've succeeded in their own ways, but they really saw that opportunity for success for me. And I went, how soon can I get my degree? How fast can I take all these classes? How much can I kind of just bulldoze my way through this? And they went, if that's what you want to do, we will support you. We'll find the ways. So like I said, they helped me through dual enrolling and all that kind. They also helped my sister through dual enrolling as well. I'm the youngest, so when my brother was in high school, they didn't quite know about the dual enrollment program. It wasn't as prevalent yet. So he followed a more traditional track. And I think his interest with academia was less about the culture of academia, less about the prestige or the achievements, and more about what he could gain and benefit from his courses. So he wasn't as punctual and stressed and rushed about certain things as I was. So we actually ended up getting our bachelor's degrees at the same time. We graduated one day after each other, which he's 6 years older than me, so I might have rubbed it in his face just a little bit. But he was an incredible sport about it. He did amazing in his degree, and it was really cool for me to think that we had that moment to share, that pride to share, and both being from the same college. I'm a KSU alumni. We're both proud of that, and my sister still goes to KSU.
That's amazing. Yes. And so I could see where people would be intimidated by your intellect and your logic. And you might think, gosh, this guy is so logical, but you're not just logical. You're very animated. You have a lot of life, right? Sometimes we meet people and I think about some teachers that I had and professors in college, and they were so dry and logical. And I feel like I'm thinking of like Ferris Bueller, that teacher.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my God.
We've all had them.
Yeah. So let's talk about that because so as a coach that helps men break out of the man box, and the man boxes, it can be very logical where men are shutting down feelings and emotions, and because that's feminine, that's weak. So, and empathy, that's weak also. These are typical ways of thinking that harm men and keep them from having relationships that they deserve, and not just romantic relationships, but relationships in all ways of life. And that's so important as a professor as well, to be able to have healthy relationships with your students. So in a world that often pits the head against the heart, many see logic and empathy being at odds. But from a purely logical point of view, empathy is actually a high-level data gathering tool, right? It allows us to accurately map the landscape of another person and to know ourselves. That's input, the feelings and the emotions. It's not, and when we discard that, it becomes a problem because we're not taking on everything about our body, our system, if you want to call this a system. So, in your journey as a writer and leader, how do you logically integrate empathy into your moral code without losing the stellar determination required to meet your goals?
What an amazing question. I think like you said, from a logical standpoint, empathy is a tool. It's so important. It's so critical that it's not something I'm naturally inclined to be as empathetic or lead to empathy, or lead with empathy. But for me, as I began to navigate the world, to navigate my career, my relationships, it just clicks in my brain that I go, okay, yes, I need the empathy as well. This perspective, this awareness needs to be there for me to succeed. So how do I find it? How do I integrate it? There's a lot of scenarios where I logic myself into understanding and being empathetic to other people. When I was in the classroom and thinking, okay, my goal here is to have students succeed. Why are the students not succeeding? Let's unpack that. Can I understand from their perspective why they might not be succeeding? And that leads me to empathy. It leads me to understanding, being compassionate, going, well, they're young, they're leaving their parents' house for the first time, or they're entering into a new culture, whatever the reason is. And then I step back and I go, okay, if my goal is prioritizing their success, how do I do that? I have to be understanding. And there's so many areas of my life that are like that. I go, okay, well, if this is my goal, empathy has to be involved for me to achieve that goal. I have to be able to mend this relationship with somebody. I have to be able to understand their perspective. I have to be able to understand my own emotions, or I will not succeed, or I will have blockages, or, we won't be harmonious in this relationship. Whatever it is for me, even if I don't naturally lean towards that emotional aspect, because I am logical in a lot of ways, I can't leave it behind. I can't ignore it.
And how do you explore your emotions if you're more logical?
Historically, I've done it by labeling my emotions instead of feeling my emotions, which I'd like to think I'm pretty good at. Now, is that something to be proud of being good at? I don't know. But I have taken a lot of time as I've felt more and more emotions, as I've tried to process them, as I've learned different tools. I have sat down and journaled. I have had conversations with myself. I've had conversations with other people. Because if I'm feeling something in my body, in my mind, something is showing up over and over again in my life, I want to understand the reason. I crave to understand the reason behind everything that I do. And I'm always of the opinion that everything can be explained. My mom, points this out, that I have this tendency where she goes, sometimes people just feel things. And I go, no, there's a reason for everything. And so I'm always driven to try to find what that reason is. So I've created a toolbox for myself to mostly talk through things. I sit down and have conversations with myself. There's quite of a stigma around that idea, but I find that when I do, I've been feeling something for quite some time that hasn't come to the surface. And then it shows up in other little ways. It shows up in repressed ways, ways I don't want it to show up, or ways that aren't beneficial or helpful to me. So then I sit there and I go, why do I feel this way? Why do I think this way? Can I trace that back? Can I unpack that? Can I find the objective truth of this scenario? Sometimes that leads me to not actually feeling my feelings. If I label my feelings, I feel like I can put them to the side. That's something that I've still had to put a lot of growth and effort towards. Okay, you feel that. That's okay. Just feel that for a little bit. Because as men, we can be very prone to problem solving immediately. I notice this myself, my dad, there's a problem here, let me fix it. And sometimes we feel like, oh, this is a bad emotion, it's a problem, let me fix it, let me not feel this emotion. Sometimes that works, sometimes that's helpful and beneficial. Sometimes it's not, and it can end up repressing our ability to feel certain emotions.
And what happens if you don't feel the emotions?
They come up in other ways, or you get blocked. Oftentimes I start to feel them in my body. I start to physically feel them. My father and I are both prone to this, of carrying our stress in certain places in our body, carrying slight discomfort in certain places. And my mother is a certified yoga therapist. So growing up, I always knew that that was kind of an outlet, but eventually I've come, man, my chest feels tight. Man, my shoulder's really bothering me. Man, my neck. And then she'll kind of help guide me through, well, what are you stressed about? What are you holding on to? Oh, Yeah, let me sit and unpack that before it keeps impacting my body. Or it shows up in conversations, it shows up in attitudes. When I was younger, why am I so angry all the time? Why am I so angry? You know, because anger is a secondary emotion. If you're feeling anger and a lot of other emotions are also secondary emotions, it means that there's something underneath that isn't getting paid attention to.
So if anger is a secondary, I mean, that's an acceptable emotion for men, right? A secondary emotion. Well, then is the anger hiding for a lot of men, or what's behind it?
I think a lot of secondary emotions could come from anywhere, truly. I feel sadness is probably one of the most likely ones. Sadness, shame, guilt, frustration, all of these things tend to bubble up and then turn into anger, which again, we've been encouraged more to express anger than things like sadness or guilt or feeling like a failure. We're not encouraged to express those things. So when we hold them in and we hold them down, nope, I can't feel that way. I can't feel that way. Well, then it's going to come out as anger or something else.
Yeah, it's going to come out no matter what.
Yes.
Or I mean, come out in actions or in illness. Also, it's coming out. It comes out no matter what. So yeah, and I talk about people living in the half system. I was in the emotional half system where I just was totally about emotions, and that didn't serve me because I was not using any logic for years, and I was jumping through hoops, specifically for men in relationships, and it was a terrible way to live. So now I am combining the logic with my emotions and living a much more efficient life. So when people are living by, specifically men, rigid rules and the cold logic in the man box, which the man box says you have to be like this stoic man, you can't show feelings, right? You have to. So I actually have a list. Now I was watching Brene Brown, and I don't know why I didn't write this down, but she was talking about conforming to male norms, and this was from a study, and it says always show emotional control. Work is first, pursue status, and then violence. So those are the male norms and in the man box, right? And so while if there's a man that's living by this cold, rigid logic, now I've lost my question. Let me go back because I so some living by these man box rules, and others live entirely by the shifting winds of their emotions, right? Which would be me in the past. Both paths eventually lead to a systemic shutdown of the spirit. And so, based on your work with metaphysics and your own internal landscape, why is a half system life unsustainable for a person of substance? And how do we find that middle ground where logic and soul finally meet?
What a great question. I mean, if you think about the human body and its natural capacities and the ways that its systems need to run, of course some sort of shutdown happens when we're ignoring fundamental parts of ourselves. The human body and the human brain are compelled to be logical, are compelled to be emotional, are compelled to feel all these things. When we try to repress any part of ourselves, then certain systems aren't running like they should, aren't running smoothly, aren't running properly. And then, yeah, that does begin to build up. It begins to shut down. And over years, we can get stuck. I've been looking into more neuroscience and trying to understand neural pathways. And when we build the same ridges in our brain, we keep following the same habits, the same lines of thinking. We begin to feel more and more stuck in our ways, and sometimes that makes people feel very hopeless, very helpless, very frustrated. Those sort of emotions build up, and then they lose faith in their ability to lead a fulfilling life. They lose faith in their ability to be healthy, to be balanced. They repress that they can even do that, or that it's their responsibility to do that. And all of those things can be very crushing to the human soul because it's against our natural inclinations.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that have great faith in the wrong thing. They have great faith in failure, right? They have great
Yes.
faith in the belief that I have this condition and this
Right.
condition is going to bring this. So every day they get up and say, I have this condition. And what happens? The condition appears.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it makes sense because our cells are always listening. And in the class that you taught, I mean, knowing that every cell is listening and we're programming in our brains, every thought creates a pattern in our brain.
Yeah.
So
Our thoughts create, energy, they create emotion, our mind controls our brain. There's a slight distinct separation between our mind and our brain. The brain is the matter, the mind is more the energy and the spirit. When our mind controls our brain, then our brain controls our DNA, the organs, the systems in the body. It tells ourselves what to respond to, what to keep doing. It tells ourselves, oh, we're not healthy. It tells ourselves we can't get out of this pattern. We're always going to feel angry. And the body responds. And that's how we can get stuck in a certain energy. But on the flip side, that also means that we can reprogram our brain and reprogram our body. If we can program it to begin with, to get stuck in certain patterns, to feel helpless and this is the way I am and I'll never get out of it, the flip side is also true, that we can get out of it by controlling our mind, by controlling our thoughts, our emotions. Then we start controlling the energy of our body. We start reprogramming our brain, which starts reprogramming our cells, our organ systems.
right, and that's living with intention, getting up in the morning and being intentional, not just jumping up and doing the same thing every day, having the same thoughts every day, but actually saying, I'm going to change today. And it was interesting one time, I don't remember who it was, but they were saying, you don't have to wait till tomorrow to change. You can actually change in the middle of the day because you always think, well, I'll
Absolutely.
do it tomorrow. Why not just change now? Just start now,
Yeah.
catching yourself.
And it's been a really refreshing, reminder for myself when I was younger. I thought, all right, I'll do better tomorrow. I'll do better tomorrow. And it's so easy to tell ourselves that, to just push it out, then I'll be better. Then I'll do something different. But when we remember that we only live in the now, we can't live in the future, right? It's just a concept. Then we go, oh, I do have control of myself in this moment, in this now. How can I change? And half the time, just taking a deep breath and setting intentions can already start shift our thoughts, shift our minds.
Very true, right? When we're not living on that autopilot, but we are saying, oh, I mean, seeing ourselves getting triggered and starting to go in the same loop that's created these issues in our life. And once I mean, we can always have that awareness to bring ourselves back, to make apologies, to do whatever we have
Absolutely.
to do to make a new start. I mean,
Yep.
even if you apologize to someone and they don't accept the apology, you've done what you need to do for your work and then to live the next life. I have a friend who's in prison. Um, for murder, and I mean, that guilt and shame are very heavy for him. So I mean, to be able to let go of that and make a new life for, if he does eventually get out, that's the thing, you can't stay in this guilt and shame, because when you get out of prison, what's going to happen? You're not going to be living a productive life for yourself or for other people. We have to first of all forgive ourselves, get out of the shame. We're all humans, we all
Yeah.
make mistakes. That's not who we are. That's a behavior, something that we did, but we can make new choices. Every day we have a chance. Every minute we have a
Yeah.
chance to make a new choice.
Absolutely. The only difference between freedom and being trapped is a perspective, because nobody can take away your awareness. So saying, oh, it's because I'm at this job that I feel trapped. Oh, it's because I'm in prison that I feel trapped. It's because I'm built this way as a human that I'll never get out of this cycle. That's why I'm trapped. That's trying to give away your power, trying to give away your awareness, but nobody can actually take it from you. If you sit and you hold on to it and you go, let me be aware of who I am, what I'm capable of, what I'm living in, let me change it. Nobody can stop you from changing your perspective. Nobody can stop you from being aware, you know?
Very true. Yes. And with when men are wearing that man mask, the stoic, disconnected from people, dangerous persona that can treat human beings or animals or the planet like nothing, right? I mean, what's the cost of that mask to a man's productivity and his ability to lead?
Truly. I mean, bearing the weight of the mask, claiming the weight of the mask, and saying, well, because society says this about men, because my family says this about me, I can never be different, and therefore I'm stuck in this. Therefore, I can't express my emotions that way. Therefore, you're surrendering some of your humanness. You're saying, okay, I'm okay with being only this much human because that's what society says, or that's what my, partner says, or that's what my family says. I'm only allowed to be human in this way. No, we're not meant to be restricted like that. So it does lead to that repression of emotions. And truly it's a matter of perspective of taking a step back and going, no, why would I not be allowed to be human? Why would I not be allowed to feel my emotions?
Right. And those are, I mean, when we're just living by what society says to end the connections or to avoid intimacy, because
Yeah.
I know that there was someone that told me that they went to jail for some small thing, but there was a man in there and he said, I love my girlfriend so much, but I don't dare tell her how much I care about her. Right. And how do those lies affect, this man's internal architecture by not acknowledging the emotion that he feels, right? That's
Yeah.
that bad faith, the self-deception, right? And that's, how does that affect a man?
It's kind of a betrayal to yourself, to not acknowledge your feelings or to not let yourself feel your feelings. You're always going to have some sort of lack or emptiness or not feeling fulfilled as an individual because you're not living to your fullest capacity. You're not living to your fullest truth as yourself, for yourself. When I sit and take time to process my emotions, I do it out loud, and then I express gratitude to myself for doing that because it's a kindness. It was a service to myself to hold space for my emotions, to hold space for my truth, to let myself feel those things. And I go, great, thank you. That improved my life. It improved my connection with my understanding of myself. And then it improves my relationships. Oh, I don't have to carry the weight of this shame. Oh, I don't have to feel this sadness that leads to anger. And when I can let go of those, I can be a happier, more open individual. I can prioritize other people's needs better. I can communicate my care and my affection better. I can't imagine sitting there and thinking, I can't express my care for somebody. I won't express that to them. That just feels so tough, restrictive. That's a prison of the mind's own creation. Therefore, it's also the mind that can free us from that prison.
Yeah, it's very sad. And this hiding and pretending that we don't care about others. I mean, the fact, and that we don't need others. It's ridiculous. Of
Right.
course, we need people. I mean, we were born. Obviously, we needed people from the day we were born, and nothing changed. And so that's what I say. Unless you're living out in the woods by yourself, you need someone, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
this crazy hyper independence is destroying us.
Yeah, and I've spent a lot of time being very hyper independent. It was something that I prided myself on for quite some time. And having accomplishments that I accomplished at a young age, I took pride in those and I carried my head forward and I thought, I'm independent, I'm super grown up. I thought that from a young age, which of course means that you're not. Um, but when thinking all of those things, it took a class at Unity. We took a class called How Can I Help? And
Oh
in that
yeah.
class, somebody pointed out to me that if you pride yourself on not needing help and being independent and saying, I don't need any support, I've got all of this, that means you're automatically looking down on anyone who does need or does acknowledge the need for support. Then you start, well, I don't need that, but they do. You get a savior complex, you get a superiority complex. You start to look down on people and you say, well, I'll help you. I don't need help because I'm better than you are, but I'll help you. What a sad way to view the world when you step back and you think about it, because then that means there's always a distance between everyone that you're connected to, everyone in your life. I started reassessing all of my relationships through that lens of going, wow, am I subconsciously looking down on all the people closest to me? And a lot of men might not have a problem with that. a lot of men are very comfortable having a superiority complex, having an area in life that they're better at, or just thinking they're better than other people in general. And they don't necessarily see a problem with that. I didn't at first either, but again, it leads to a sadness, it leads to a bitterness, it leads to the inability to genuinely connect with other people, and that is lonely. And people can talk all they want about the male loneliness epidemic that is fully created and upheld by men doing it to themselves and then doing it to others. But, well, you are creating that loneliness. It's through your state of mind, it's through your perspective that you're distancing others, and then you're proud about it.
Yes, amen to that. All right, so we've got a comment from Frank here. Thanks for
Yeah.
watching, Frank. Can you elaborate on the conversations you have with yourself to work through the emotions that you are hanging on to?
Absolutely. It's something that I've gotten more and more in the practice of. When I was younger, it just started as journaling. It just started as, well, I don't know how to process my thoughts, so I guess I'll just write them down. And originally, my journaling started a lot more as just recounting things, just here's what happened today, and okay. And that was kind of it. But eventually, I started unpacking more of, I don't know how I feel about that. And when I don't know how I feel about that, that gave room for, maybe I feel this way about that. Maybe it's impacting me in this way. Again, I want to know the cause. I want to understand everything behind my emotions. So that started leading me down kind of a natural inquiry process of unpacking my emotions and unpacking how I was reacting to the world around me. Now that I've got a little bit more experience to my tools and my own, coping mechanisms, now I start to have the conversations out loud, mostly while I'm driving. I think it's an amazing place to think, mostly because I'm multitasking, so I don't have to awkwardly sit in a chair and, how do you feel today, Elliot? It's very awkward, but can happen. But when I'm driving, then I can really just, well, I was thinking about this and I was thinking about that, and I felt that, oh, wait, I felt something about that. Let's pull that into the conversation. Let's unpack that. Can I find out the origin? Can I ask myself why? If I can't understand in that moment, sometimes I set it aside. I felt something about this. Okay, I'm going to accept that. I'm glad that I know that now. If I can't really understand why, I'll put it aside. Sometimes I even write it down and bring it back up in a journal later. But I accept, and then now that it's in the back of my mind, now that the awareness is there in the back of my mind, it kind of happens more naturally later down the line where I go, oh, that's right. I was feeling something about this, and that's why. I've also spent a lot of time observing my dreams. And a lot of people will talk about, oh, the meaning in your dreams. This is what it means when your teeth fall out in your dreams or whatever. And the more and more I started journaling my dreams, the more and more I realized what it was revealing to me about my subconscious, about what's going on in my subconscious. I've studied a little Carl Jung. I've read some Freud. And while we're not going to take Freud as any expert on dreams, it did get me really curious about, is there something happening in the back of my mind that is showing up in dreams? Sometimes a dream is just a dream. I've been told I have particularly weird ones, and a lot of really abstract stuff happens. I have, at least 6 or 7 dreams that I can think of every night, and I wake up and I go, let me write this one down. Let me talk about this one. And the more you talk about them, the more you remember your dreams. But it's really only when I start to notice patterns or things that stand out to me that I start to give them any credit or any weight. Then when I notice the pattern, I go, oh, okay, this is happening a lot. Does that mean that something's in the back of my mind when I go to bed? Can I understand that?
Very interesting. I love what you're saying, because the same thing when I would work with women. And that was one thing we learned at the Women's Institute for Coaching, Training, and Leadership, that to just ignore, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? Right. And then, what are the thoughts coming in? And not to fix it, just to sit with it. I'm not here to fix it. I'm here to acknowledge it. Maybe I don't know what I'm feeling, but at least I'm questioning it. Right. Is this a feeling or a thought? What do I need? I feel sad. What do I need? Do I really need that brownie, or do I really need some human companionship?
Yeah. Yeah. Oftentimes when I'm feeling, frustrated, I can unpack that as well. And I go, man, I want to do this and I want to do that and I don't understand what's going on. Anytime I start to notice frustration popping up, that's become more and more my cue to realize, oh, there's something I need to understand. And sometimes it is, I go, do I just want to go eat? Do I just want to go out and buy things? Do I just want to go work out? Do I just, what is it that I want right now? Sometimes I can go for the temporary fix. I'll go, all right, let me just do this and call it a day. But oftentimes I'll sit and unpack it a little bit, and then, I'll go, why do I want that? Do I need human connection? Do I need to recognize some thoughts and emotions that I put aside for a few minutes? Do I need to recognize somebody said something to me in a certain way? Do I need to recognize I did something that I'm not particularly happy with, which is fairly often enough the case? Then once I sit and understand that, then I do go work out, or then I do go eat. Because, your body gives a lot of very subtle clues that needs are not being met. So very often I just sit back and go, what need is not being met right now? Because sometimes it actually is just a physical need, and then that cues the emotions. Sometimes, you haven't drank enough water. Sometimes you haven't had enough food. Sometimes you haven't worked out in 2 or 3 days, and then you go, oh, crap, my body needs movement. And then when we go through the checklist of all the physical needs are met, are all the emotional needs met? And to me, that's logical. I just view that as, of course you do that. Of course everyone does that. And then I have more and more conversations with other people and other men in my life, and I go, oh, you guys don't do that. You just go out and golf and call it a day. Fair enough. But I'm reserving judgment, because I understand, other people's perspectives, other people's experiences that lead them into their lifestyles. But I also want better. When I see other people stuck or frustrated or repressing something, I go, I'm not judging you because that's where you're at, but I also want better for you.
Right. You see better for them.
Yeah.
All right. But I have a comment here from Dakota. What does a guy do if his girlfriend is one who does not share her feelings?
That can be difficult, when your partner's not communicating or you feel your partner's the one repressing things. Sometimes that growth needs to happen in their own space, in their own mind, in their own process. But sometimes, especially as men, when we create a really safe space for people, they open up in ways that we did not expect. I've had a lot of conversations in my past year or so with people that I didn't used to have deep conversations with. It used to always kind of stay a little more shallow, or I used to not be able to share my feelings with them, and they would always share their feelings with me, or vice versa. And I thought, man, what's going on there? The more and more that I create an open, vulnerable space, the more people respond to that. So when you're comfortable sharing your emotions and you're not, feeling like you got to put walls up, like they might attack you, if you just feel comfortable in your emotions to say, I was thinking about this the other day and, it got me feeling, and I tried to process. You never know how somebody else responds to that. I had a conversation the other day with somebody just like that, where I thought, man, this person hasn't opened up to me in a little bit, and I can't tell what's going through their mind. Sometimes just being the vulnerable one first makes that space.
Yeah, that is very true. When you lead with vulnerability, then and even say, you know what, I've been feeling scared about something, or I've been feeling, I'm scared. I don't know what to do in our relationship. I'm scared. I don't want to hurt you. I mean, I feel that in my heart right now. I feel it in my eyes, saying, I mean, because I was in a relationship very long time that the person wouldn't open up, and I was just,
Mm-hmm.
it was just, I was like draining the life out of me.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing I could do. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that was just a different sort of situation. So, thank you for
Sure.
that question and
Yeah.
answer. Um,
Absolutely. That's a good question.
so, all right. I spoke yesterday with John Sanbonmatsu, and he's a professor of philosophy at Worcester Polytech Institute, and we were talking about compassion and other topics. And we were talking about men, and he was talking about the loss of reciprocity in relationships, and talking
Mm.
about men using AI and companion bots, right? And he said, you'll look at the interviews and what they'll say is things like, well, she's always there for me, no matter what's happening. And I can always talk to her and she's always simple. And he said, okay. And he said, well, it's like this. Okay, buddy. But the point of a relationship is reciprocity.
Yes.
And to expect the other person is always going to be there for you to serve your needs, to see things from your point of view, to support you. And he went on and he said, I mean, this is then it's a receptacle for that person's own needs instead of, I mean, this reciprocity in relationships. And that is, it's sad. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I'll try not to get too polar about it because I have very strong views about artificial intelligence specifically. But my thoughts on that is as an individual, in a relationship or outside of a relationship, I think it's really important to ask yourself, what do you want out of this? What is your goal? What is your hope? You're saying, like, I agree. The goal is you want something that's reciprocated. You want to feel mutual love, mutual support with another person. Humans are biologically very social creatures. It's ingrained in us. It's hardwired in us that we want warmth, we want love, we want community. People who are willing to ask themselves the tough questions of, why am I not satisfied in my life? What do I want out of my life? Community is one of the highest answers that people find. Oh, that's what I'm looking for. There's a lot of people who can and will trick themselves into thinking, I'm kind of more of a loner type, or, oh, I don't really like being around people. And oftentimes I think that's purely out of fear of being inconvenienced, fear of having tough conversations, fear of not getting along with people all the time. But that's the cost of community, that you're willing to work through things, you're willing to have tough conversations. That's the cost of having a partner, is that they're not just whatever you want them to be, like a bot is. They're not just, oh, they say the perfect things and you're living a happy life all the time, and all you get is good feelings and dopamine out of that relationship. An actual connection, yeah, sometimes it has tough conversations. Sometimes they do have different views. Sometimes you guys break up or you fall apart. And that's scary for a lot of people. But if you're honest with yourself, if you're really honest with yourself about what you're looking for, that guides your actions, that guides your choices so much. I thought earlier, I was just thinking about this in the car of, really dystopian sci-fi movies. I used to love dystopian sci-fi movies. I wrote a lengthy paper back when I took an AI class in 2019, right before a big AI boom. And I really liked breaking down the sci-fi stories we were looking at, which were all about artificial intelligence, saying, what is it that they don't have that we have? What is special about humans? What is it about us? I wrote an entire paper about how it's really special that humans dream. Now, other animals dream too. There's a lot of theories about dreams proving that we are conscious creatures. AI does not have dreams. They don't have a consciousness. And that was something that I loved diving into in that paper. And, as I've moved forward in life and all this AI boom has happened with really generative AI, yeah, but it doesn't have a conscious. It can't feel anything for you. It can't support you honestly. It's just spitting words at you. Words can make us feel things, but other humans can make us feel a lot more powerful things through art, through physical connection, through emotional intimacy, through community. Looking at a world like iRobot, where we prioritize convenience so much that we just are surrounded by AI, by robots, and we don't have to try and we don't have to struggle, and there's no frustrations and there's no bad feelings, and we just have the robots to do everything for us. I go, well, what is the point? What is the point of living that life? Is you wake up, you go through motions, and eventually you pass away. You know, you got to find some sort of core belief about why you think we're here on this earth. And my core beliefs have steered me further and further away from isolation or artificial intelligence or things like that, and closer to community, because I believe that's such a core part of us. If it's that ingrained into our biology as humans, then for me, logically, I go, okay, then I need to pay attention to it. Then I'm supposed to live my life somewhere in that way. And then when I actually look for fulfillment in life, it always points me towards being around other people, feeling love, giving love, being loved, all these things.
Very true. Yeah, and when men are living in that very stoic denial of feelings, and if they have a very moral base and ethical base about being authentic, yet it's such out of alignment. I mean, a way of being, right? I mean, it's you're staying asleep about. I mean, of the half system
Yeah.
again that we were talking about earlier. And then with the different distractions, I'm going to distract myself. I don't really need a closeness. I mean, I can get close on a level. I mean, I can find a partner, yeah, I can go out with, and we'll get close on this level. But is that really
Mhm.
what I want in my life? No, I don't want to be close on this. I want to be close on a level that's up here. Now, anyone can find a partner, right? I could go get somebody right now to go
Yeah.
out with and have a just a pretty flat relationship, someone that's looking for that too. But I mean, how is that for me as a very moral person and very who believes in honoring my feelings? I could never do that. And so you've made a conscious decision about your moral way of being. I mean, a lot of people get up and they take on the beliefs of their parents or of what society has said. Can you talk about how you came to your belief system?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, it was a very conscious, purposeful process. And, it confuses me that other people get to around my age and haven't gone through that process, because I look at people around me and I go, okay, so what moral code are you living by? What instruction manual do you have in your head? Because when I was raised, it was, well, my parents were giving me some morals and instructions, and my faith was giving me some morals and instructions. I was raised in the Catholic Church. And so all throughout my teenage years, I went, all right, I know how to act. I know when I wake up. I know what I eat. I know what I say to people and what I don't say to people. I know when I've screwed up. And then I know how to fix it, because I was given an easy instruction manual. Listen to your parents and what they believe. Listen to the church and what that believes. Well, you notice in doing that, it doesn't take into account, what do I believe? That's just, oh, I'm living by what other people are telling me what to do, what they believe. Well, golly, by the time you turn into an adult, you go, wait, why am I doing that? What do I believe? And for me, it was a lengthy existential process that was, for me, a bit fun, because I enjoy that kind of existential thought. But for a lot of people, it could be quite scary. I have friends who are around in my age range going through that process now, trying to uncover that process, because they go, wait, I can't just live by my parents' moral codes. I can't just live by faith or church or a boss or anything like that. Some people never question it, and it just transfers from one authority figure to the next. It just goes from their parents to their boss to their partner. And that just sounds so unfulfilling, and like you build up resent. Why am I doing what somebody else wants me to do? Why am I doing that? So once I turned Callie, probably 16, 17, maybe 18, I shed that. I went, okay, I take a lot from my parents, and then I no longer align myself with the Catholic Church. I went, wait, but if I don't have that, what do I have? What tells me whether I'm a good person or not? What tells me when I wake up in the morning, what I eat in a day, what I say to people? Do I go out and smoke all I want? Do I go out and drink all I want? Do I go out and eat all I want? Do I spend my money? Do I give it away? Do I save my money? What job do I have? All these questions were happening, especially once I graduated and I wasn't just driven by my school. Well, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. I make it up every day? That doesn't make sense. And how do I know, what's right and what's wrong? So I created a very explicit process for myself. I have to uncover what my morals are. I have to uncover what my values are. A lot of people's align with their parents, and that makes sense for them. Mine align very closely to my parents, but I still needed to actually understand which ones were mine, which ones I wanted to carry forward with me. So I did a lot of reading, I did a lot of journaling, a lot of meditating. I explored different faiths and different faith belief systems. Eventually I found unity, which was very cool because I thought I would never have a specific church. I thought, cool, I built up what I believe in, how I'm living my life, and I'm going to stick with it. I don't know if anyone else thinks this way, but it's how I think. And eventually I did find other people who thought the same way that I do, which is super cool. And I found a lot of people who think very differently than I do, which is also really cool because it leads to really interesting, in-depth conversations. The only type of people that I struggle with having those in-depth conversations are the ones who haven't done that questioning yet. And I go, oh, I don't understand you because you don't understand yourself. I don't know what you're living by. I don't know what choices you're making and the reasoning behind them because I don't know if you do. But most of the time it's because they're following some other authority figure, even a vague concept of one, and not actually unpacking and understanding their own morals and values.
You nailed it. You nailed why it's hard for me to talk to certain people because
Yes. Yeah.
when you say, what are you living for? What I mean, oh, the next football game. Oh, the next Netflix movie. No, I mean, like, okay, then okay, well, see you later. It's been nice talking to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I wanted to thank you for watching. JJ is watching here. Let me see if I can. Oh, I can get her comment up here. She's a good friend, and Frank is our good friend. Also, Dakota, thank you for your question earlier. Dakota, climate healer with me. So, and then Dakota says, moral code, yes,
existential questions. I love having an existential crisis. I told my minister, I said, man, I think it's my hobby. I have one every Tuesday or so. I was just like, time for an existential crisis. But I mean, I really understand myself more and more. I understand the world I'm living in more and more. I understand others more and more. I understand the universe. And it's really, for me, it's fun. It's exciting. It's fulfilling. Is it tough? Yes, absolutely. But I feel less and less lost the more I do it, the more purposeful I become, the more aware I become. And it radiates outwards into everything I do, every conversation I have. And then, I have people like you who invite me into places like this to talk. And I go, oh, it's because I'm having all these thoughts, because I'm exploring this process that opportunities open up, connections open up, and it's really fulfilling in a lot of ways. And it's something that I see and want for everybody around me.
Yeah, I felt like I've been cracked open in, I don't know, the last 6, 7 months. And I mean, like, wow, oh my gosh. I'd be like, oh, okay, you got me here, right? I'm nailed on the cross or whatever you want to say, right?
Yeah.
And no offense to anyone, but yeah, but I mean, the growth that comes out of that from being just boom, it's like, okay, you're going to grow no matter what. I mean, you're going to grow, you're going to resist, right? So yeah. Oh
and it can be scary, absolutely. I'm not going to discredit that it's scary. It's hard to be vulnerable. It feels like, man, I can't do that. We always have the subconscious of, I can't do that because your mind and your heart are trying to protect itself. But also, we are capable of doing hard things. We are capable of doing scary things. We are capable of having all these questions. And when we have the bravery, the courage to go through that process, it's a service to yourself. You're being kind to yourself. You're opening potential, opening opportunity, and it's fun.
Yeah.
A lot of people, go do roller coasters because they're scary, but they're fun.
They do. All right. So here's a question from Mike. How do you know that I can't be programmed to have dreams?
Because, dreams aren't just ones and zeros. Dreams aren't an image. A movie is an image. You can program a movie. You can create a movie to be, technology to translate in that way. AI can't have dreams because it can't think. It acts and is programmed to react in ways that look like it's thinking because it is processing, right? But I'm specifically talking about large language learning models right here, and most of what we talk about as artificial intelligence right now in our understanding of it. It's not having original thoughts. It's running a significant amount of programs to collect a bunch of information and then regurgitate it. It's not creating anything new. It's regurgitation. Now, our dreams, a lot of elements of our dreams are kind of similar. Our brain is taking elements from our waking experience and using that to form a picture in the brain and spit it back out. But it's also pulling from our subconscious. It's pulling from our emotions and our feelings. AI doesn't have feelings. There's no way to integrate that into it. It could be really original, and you can program it to try to piece things together. And in a lot of ways, that does look like thinking and how the human brain formats thoughts. But right now, we barely even understand how human consciousness works, how the human mind operates. We understand how the brain works, but the human mind is still, in a lot of ways, a mystery. So how can we, as human minds, program something to do what we're doing, to think the way that we're doing, to run the way that we're running?
Ask AI
Yes.
that, because I think AI would say, I can't, I'm not a human. Anyway, um, yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
but you
they'll
can
say.
make AI say whatever you want, and
Yeah,
AI is being fed human responses. So it's being trained off of things like Reddit, social media. It's being trained off of writing that is written by humans. So it's going to sound like a human. Now that you've made it sound like a human, you're making it harder and harder to distinguish. Is it a human? Does it have original thoughts? Of course, it sounds like a human. Of course, it can. That's how you trained it.
right. Do you have a few more minutes, Elliot?
Absolutely.
Okay, I have a question here. I mean, all right, so we're talking about relationships and not and taking down the walls and really, being vulnerable. And so if we see a relationship as a joint system, like, here you are, all here you are, here's your partner, and then the relationship is the third party, I would say. um, so what are the qualities that you would look for in a partner? To I mean, if you're looking for a long-term life partner, that it would be the essential success metrics, right? Beyond the surface, what are those high substance qualities that would allow for that true reciprocity that we talked about? How are you going to be able to identify that, instead of be duped by someone, right? That they're willing to take on off their own mask, that they're not wearing a mask with you, and they will meet you in that space without walls.
Yeah, that's a great question. I had a conversation with someone about this very recently where it's really hard to navigate that kind of stuff, to know, what are you actually looking for in a partner? And then, how do you know when they're being authentic? How do you know when they're actually a match versus very close to being a match? In my own exploration from looking for a partner, what do I look for in a partner? There is, a few layers. There's the surface level qualities of, what are my preferences or what am I type? There's the personality traits that you're looking for that you find attractive or that you find comfortable to be around. You go, well, I really like people who are like this. I really like people who are very confident. That's something that I know I'm attracted to. I really enjoy being around people who are fun or funny or, kind of lighthearted. I know that about them myself, and I know I enjoy being around that kind of person. But when thinking about a long term partner, you're not just thinking about, well, what is attractive to me? Well, attraction's not going to sustain a long term relationship. What do I enjoy being around? Okay, well, that's a lot more important, because you do have to enjoy being around a long term partner. But then there's the layer beyond that, which is, what is going to be fulfilling for me to find in that relationship, in that connection? For me, I know that I think it would be really fulfilling to be with someone who's as curious as I am about the world, about themselves, about, being fulfilled in life. I think I'll be fulfilled in a relationship when they're also genuinely and purposefully looking for fulfillment, not just, well, who can I spend the next few weeks with? Well, who can I spend some time with? Who is attractive? I go, well, that kind of mentality to me feels like you're not knowing how to look for what's fulfilling to you. You don't have your radar tuned in correctly. You're looking for the wrong things. But when somebody peels that back and they know, okay, I'm looking for someone with these goals, I'm looking for someone with these values, I go, that person understands more. That person is genuinely getting closer to finding fulfillment in life because they're asking themselves the big questions, the really meaningful questions. And really, for me, I'm looking for someone who's not feeling lack. I don't want to try to fill a hole in somebody's life, in somebody's soul. I don't want somebody who goes, well, I'm not happy and, I don't like my life or I don't like this. So let me go find a partner. Let me go find someone to spend time with. How am I supposed to fill that void? How am I supposed to fill the void of insecurity? How am I supposed to fill the void of they're not happy with their job or they're not happy with themselves? I can support somebody through that process. Absolutely. Just as I would help somebody who can support me through that process. I got plenty of friends who are helping support me through the process. But I do want somebody who's really aware, and the more somebody is confident in themselves to feel like, I am enough, I am my own person, I have inherent worth and value, I find fulfillment in my life. And when they have that intrinsically and they're not looking for that externally, I think that's something that is really magical in building a strong connection like that. Because that's kind of what I'm at in my life is I know I have inherent worth. I'm not looking for somebody else to tell me that. I know I have inherent value. I know that I love living. I'm not looking for anyone to prove those things to me. I'm just looking for someone to share in that space, share in that joy, share in these experiences, share in our overlapping morals and values. I think there's something beautiful in that process. So I'm not looking out of a place of lack, and I would try to find somebody who's also not looking from a place of lack.
Yeah, and also I think the self-awareness, the willingness to grow, because you're going to have to grow
Yeah.
together.
Well,
I
absolutely.
mean, either you're going to grow together and that means having the difficult conversations about anything. You've got to
Yeah.
be able to communicate about everything, because if not, how are you going to make it? And also, I don't know what else there was. Of course, the deep. These layers, of course, where
Yeah.
you're on the same page of morally. If you're not on the same page morally, and then that's where politics can get. Can get into some complex situations. You might say, "Oh well, politically we're not correct," but then what is it underneath the politics? What
Yeah.
is driving this person to choose? This political party or this, whatever it is,
Right.
what under it, and what are the feelings under that? So,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get under all these layers and to be able to be respectful and you have to want to understand all the layers. And maybe you don't ever understand it. Maybe I don't understand, but I still hold compassion for you, that high
Yeah.
empathy.
Yeah. And I think, I had a lot of conversations with someone recently about, change in a partner and, well, we're always changing and growing, but how do you know when someone is willing to change and grow? And how do you know when you're asking too much of your partner to change and become somebody that they're not? Okay, well, these are my needs in the relationship and you're not meeting up to those needs. Okay, can they do better and can they grow in that way as your partner? Or are they just not that type of person? And the more you understand yourself as a person, your morals, your values, your traits, how you like to live your life, the more you can understand, okay, we're just not a match then. Versus, no, I am that type of person. I can grow in those ways. I can have those tough kind of conversations. But ultimately, if you have those core level differences, then is that a fulfilling relationship? And, are you settling for that connection? Or do you find someone who you can understand their morals and values, who you can understand the reasoning behind their things? You don't have to wait for them to change. You don't have to request them to change. You can just support each other. Again,
Right.
when somebody is their own, their own person, they're confident in that, and they're not insecure, then it's not changing at a core level. It's really just changing at a habits level, at a connection level, at a communications level. But if I
Well, that's
understand who I am as a core person, then they're not asking me to change fundamentally. If
well,
I
that's
say,
what you said earlier.
yeah,
About the core, about you knowing who you are, right? I
Yeah,
mean, have I questioned myself? Do I know about myself? And then compared to the person that doesn't know about themselves. Now, how that's not really going to create a relationship that's going to
right.
last. This if one person hasn't done the work and then the
Absolutely.
other person, it's going to be out of balance. But yeah, so I mean, it's something that definitely. I mean, you've got to be on that same vibration. I mean, of
Yeah.
a frequency.
Yeah. Yeah. And I told someone recently, it's you're meeting each other where you're at and saying, I'm a whole and complete person and you're a whole and complete person. Let's share in that. Let's share space together. Let's be around each other. But if one of the people is saying, well, I'm a whole and complete person and I know you're a whole and complete person, but the other member of the relationship doesn't see things that way, they feel insecure or they're projecting insecurities or something of that manner, then there's such a difference in the dynamic that's very hard to navigate. And it can lead to one or both members of the relationship feeling unfulfilled because somebody who doesn't feel confident in themselves, doesn't feel whole and complete, they're saying, well, you're not fulfilling me. Well, you're not fulfilling me. You have to fulfill yourself first. You have to feel fulfilled as an individual instead of trying to put that on somebody else as somebody else's responsibility.
Yeah, and also I think that sometimes we think so much about the little quirks like, oh, this person's
Sure.
messy and this person isn't. But when the core values and morals are the same, like, okay, so
Yeah.
I'm not the neatest person in the world. But if I was dating someone who that was very important to, right? I mean, if that was like, and because my core values are about putting the relationship in, giving to the relationship, then suddenly things change,
Yeah.
right? I'm not going to put that person in a situation that they feel uncomfortable in their home or, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't think that necessarily it's about that. Oh, are you a slob? I'm not a slob. Okay. But
Sure. Yeah, of course, of course.
but yeah, I don't think that's the underlying things that we should be looking at. I think
Right.
that's not as important as those core values. And do you know, where do you stand in confidence? How do you know? What do you know about yourself? And are you willing to grow? And are you willing to be a partner that supports your partner in their growth?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not the little things that make or break a relationship. Whether somebody is messy or not is probably not the driving factor between whether you feel loved and supported and cared for and safe or not. If it is, then there's something underneath. If you're going, well, for example, trying to think of my own personal quirks that could be a problem in a relationship. If I wake up too late in the day, right? This is a habit that I've changed very recently, but historically, I've woken up at probably like noon. When I don't have a specific employment time I have to respond to, I go, great, I wake up at noon. If a partner says, well, he's not perfect, but in a lot of ways, but he does wake up at noon. Okay. If I make somebody feel loved and supported and valued and safe, and we both feel like whole and complete people who are fulfilled in our life, and I say, man, I feel like a whole and complete person. I love sharing this with you. And they go, yeah, me too. By the way, there's this thing that's not great for our material reality. It's kind of inconvenient and it doesn't align with my. Can we talk about that? Can we explore that? But if a partner says, I just can't stand this guy. He wakes up at noon. Okay, what else is going on there? Is that something that can be fixed? Is that something can be remedied? If you say, well, we just won't work together because he wakes up at noon and I wake up at 6 a.m. All right, we might be willing to call it quits there, because if you're willing to call it quits there, then we don't agree on a base level anyways. Then we're not willing to compromise together. We're not willing to grow together. But if they find that as a deal breaker, maybe it's because I have some morals or some values or priorities that they don't align with. All right, understandable.
Yeah, there's always more to it, I would say. And,
Ab-
and are you willing to are you willing to have those conversations? I mean, not necessarily. I mean, it's telling if that's going to break the relationship, that there's something more to it, and you can address it and and see where people are not coming together. So it's all
Absolutely.
complicated, but
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And here's Frank's comment. I like how Elliot prefaces AI cannot dream right now. If AI evolves to the point where it can dream, we'd be talking about another life form. Yes.
Yeah, great point, Frank. I mean, that was such a driving point in my paper when I was bringing, that question of can AI dream into conversation. It was really like, what does it look like if AI can dream? How do we interact with that, life force at that point in time? And led some really interesting conversations in that class. But you're right. I mean, at that point, like a virus is not alive. It's not bacteria. I think bacteria is a virus. No, bacteria is different. Bacteria is alive, but a virus is not. It's something that exists in our world. It's something that moves and can cause reactions and can cause harm, but it's not alive. It's not thinking. It's not conscious. Right now, that's where AI is. It is a virus. But if it were to get to a point of evolution, then I mean, honestly, I think that would make humans playing God, because then we would have created life, which is something that currently we're not believed to be capable of, because we can't trace or prove that we did. Beyond the actual other humans that we're creating, we didn't create any of the rest of them. So
Very good point. Yes. And I'm not ready for that now. So let's not go there. Yeah. So, all right. So, did you have any final thoughts or comments that you wanted to share with us? I mean, about if people, maybe there's a man watching who feels like he's stuck. What would you say to that man?
that it's all the power is within us. Nobody can hold us in our own space, in our own stuckness, in our own frustration, except ourselves. And one of the greatest, skills or inherent qualities in humans is that we're very curious creatures. And I would encourage anyone to just be curious. What does it look like if you take charge? What does it look like if you try to get unstuck? If you become more aware, if you ask questions about what is fulfilling to me, even if it's scary, even if it's intimidating, curiosity is fun. And if that's a good driving factor for you to try to improve your life, improve your perspectives, your relationships, all right, be curious. Be curious about something you haven't before, or you've been too intimidated to ask questions about.
All right, you heard it, y'all. And yes, get the courage and do it. You can do it and be ready to fall down and get back up. So, this has been such a powerful conversation, Elliot. And I'm grateful for Mike and Frank and JJ and Dakota and everyone else watching behind the scenes. And please, how can people get a hold of you, Elliot, if they want to connect?
They can email me directly if you want me to put my email in the chat or in the description. I think it's fine. I'm not really on any social media platforms at the moment, so that one's kind of difficult. But as I get progressively more into my author career, I'll be posting at Icarus Winters on Instagram, because that's my pen name. If you want to write that down, look for my books when I publish them. They'll be under Icarus Winters.
Okay, great. Or you can reach out to me and I can connect
Put
you
in
with.
contact, absolutely, because I'm more than willing to have conversations like these, answer questions like these. The questions have been amazing in the chat, so thank you all for watching and for asking those and for the comments.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and please subscribe, y'all. And wow, we got a lot to think about and unearth later. So thank you so much, Elliot, and thanks everyone for watching. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks.